Why in the world would I, as a Lions fan, want to keep Matt Patricia and Bob Quinn for a fourth year? Before you go and hit the dislike button, I would appreciate it if you, the viewer, would at least hear me out for a second. I want to put a disclaimer that I'm not making this video because I have blind faith in this regime. I am more making it because of the potential future ramifications if we go ahead and move on. Pretty much all Lions fans have lost faith in this current regime, and I don't blame them. You all have eyes, and you all know that Matt Patricia has struggled to win games. So why would I want to keep Matt Patricia around for one final season? The most important reason for why I want to keep this regime for at least one more season is because the guy that will bring us over the hump might not be out there yet. The other reasons I have for wanting to keep Matt Patricia around for one more season are that we're probably going to hate the next guy just as much as we hate Patricia. Firing Patricia is not the magic spell that will turn this franchise around, and keeping Patricia could possibly make it more appealing to other coaching candidates since they will see that they will have the necessary time to install what they are trying to do. And we're going to start with that you're probably going to hate the next guy just as much as you hate Patricia. Like I said, you and me are probably going to hate the next guy just as much as you hate Patricia. What makes me think that? Well, just go scroll through the videos of your favorite Lions YouTubers. I can almost guarantee you that you will find some form of a Jim Caldwell or a Jim Schwartz rant somewhere in their videos. And to take a look at these quotes I pulled out of these articles. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that I put a lot of effort into finding these headlines and quotes, but these headlines and quotes probably sum up exactly how you, the viewer, felt about prior regimes. I know that there was a small minority of people that were pulling for Caldwell and Schwartz, but that was the minority, and I'm speaking to the majority right now. I mean, just look at that poll that was asking if the Lions should move on from Jim Caldwell. 93% of people answered yes. Granted, that poll was taken after the Lions got eliminated from playoff contention by the Bengals, but that poll is very telling. Most of you could not stand Jim Caldwell, and most of you could probably not stand Schwartz either. I'm going to describe a coaching staff, and I want you to guess if I'm talking about Jim Caldwell or Matt Patricia. This coaching staff is struggling to put a consistent running game together. This coaching staff can't put a competent defense on the field. This coaching staff is consistently allowing their team to take snaps with less than 11 players on the field. The side of the ball that this coaching staff is supposed to specialize in is letting the team down. So was I talking about Matt Patricia, or was I talking about Jim Caldwell? Exactly. You really don't miss Caldwell. You probably wanted him gone. I know there's a small minority that wanted to keep him, but the majority of you watching this video probably wanted him gone. My overall point here is that there's no guarantee that you're going to like the next guy all that much more than you like Patricia. The next person that comes in will probably be another punching bag for you, which leads to my next point and what I view as the most important point. The guy to get us over the hump might not be out there yet. And I feel that we've already established that we are not okay with just okay, which is exactly what Jim Caldwell was and what many other coaches prior were. We've hired a lot of less than stellar NFL head coaches recently. So what's the point in firing Patricia just to bring in someone who may or may not be that much better? Are there at least 20 current NFL head coaches that I would personally take over Patricia? Yeah, there are. I said at least 20, but the number is probably higher than that. But how long would you and me really be happy if we fired Patricia just to get a coach that had a 9 or 10 win ceiling and the furthest we ever got was the divisional round? Would you really be all that much happier with that coach than this current regime? We already established how the majority of you felt about Caldwell, so I would have to think that the answer is probably no. It might give you some temporary gratification, which is a common theme that you're going to hear throughout the rest of this video. But I don't know how long that temporary gratification would last. Now, with all of that said, if the guy that is going to get us over the hump is out there, then this whole point is irrelevant, and this whole video is irrelevant. But if you're Sheila and you don't think the guy is out there yet, then I don't think it's the right time to move on from this regime. There's no need to rush firing someone just to bring in someone that's only going to get a few more wins a season. And like I said, it will only give us temporary gratification, but that's probably it. My next point is that firing Patricia is not going to be the magic spell that is going to save the Lions. Look at all of these head coaches that we've had in our history. Which one of these coaches would you say saved us? Lions great Joe Schmidt had an okay record. Caldwell had an okay record. Fonts had an okay record. But overall, which coach on this slide would you say saved the franchise? Now, of course, I'm being a little vague right now, but by your own definition of saving a franchise, which of these head coaches would you say saved the Lions? The one guy that you could say saved us is Buddy Parker, who got the Lions over the hump when they were basically a head coach away. But just because Buddy Parker saved us doesn't mean that I'm going to ignore the overwhelming amount of coaches that failed. And I come back to my prior point, which is that firing Patricia will only give us temporary gratification. Do you think we're going to fire Patricia and end up hiring an Andy Reid or a Bill Belichick or a Vince Lombardi caliber coach? The history doesn't necessarily show that that is what is going to happen. So finding Hall of Fame level coaching is extremely difficult. But what about just good coaching? What are the odds that we're going to pick up a Matt LaFleur, a Bruce Arians, or a Ron Rivera caliber coach? If we fire Matt Patricia, do you believe that we're just going to pick up someone of even that caliber? Like I said, finding good coaching is hard. Be honest, how many head coaches in the NFL would you consider good coaches? Unless we're getting an elite level coach, we're probably just going to get a coach that is a net neutral or a net negative. And I'm going to keep harping this point home, even though I will probably be sounding like a broken record at this point. You, the viewer, will only get temporary gratification from a net neutral coach. Now, before we dive into some potential problems with keeping this current regime, the final reason for me wanting to give Bob Quinn and Matt Patricia one more season is to potentially make it more appealing to other coaching candidates or GM candidates. What keeping Quinn and Patricia for one more season could potentially do is show potential candidates that they will get the necessary time to install what they are trying to do. Now, I don't have any evidence that the revolving door is the reason for why the Lions have had such a hard time getting the coaching staffs right lately, but I find it hard to believe that it's not at least part of the reason. Sheila can tell whoever comes in whatever she wants, but actions speak louder than words, and giving Matt Patricia and Bob Quinn one more season would make our actions very clear. So like I said, I have no evidence that the revolving door is part of the reason as to why the Lions haven't been able to get the best coaching staffs lately. However, just to try to put yourself in the position of a potential candidate, or at least try to put yourself in the position of an everyday person that is interviewing for a job. Imagine you get offers from two employers and they both pay roughly the same. One of these employers is offering you a temporary job or it's just a seasonal job, and the other job is probably going to let you stay as long as you want. Most of you are probably going to take the job that is going to let you stay as long as you want. The NFL is a business, and head coaches are more similar to us everyday people than we might think. They are going to make a decision that is best for themselves and best for their family. If you're an aspiring head coach, would you feel that coming to a job that has very little job security is good for yourself or your family? I sure wouldn't. Now, in all honesty, there is very little job security if you're an NFL head coach. When you become a head coach, you're probably getting hired to be fired. So if you're thinking that this point is irrelevant, I can't entirely blame you. But I don't think the idea of showing potential candidates that they will have at least one extra year to get this turned around can hurt. So I'm sure there are more problems to talk about, but the two potential problems I'm going to be talking about with keeping Bob Quinn and Matt Patricia for one more year are that it will be a lot of trash to clean out for the next regime, and what if we are only a head coach away? We're going to start off with the first one. I pulled up the roster turnover of the 1968 Steelers, who went 2-11-1, the 2008 Lions, who went 0-16, and the 2017 Browns, who also went 0-16. The 1968 Steelers might seem random, but believe it or not, there was a time when the Steelers were what the Lions are today, and the Lions were what the Steelers are today. It's weird to think about, but that's the reality. Chuck Noll's first season as a head coach would be in 1969, and he was trying to turn a gutter trash franchise into something respectable. And Chuck Noll didn't just turn the Steelers into something respectable, he turned them into a model franchise. In Chuck Noll's A Football Life, Andy Russell said that Chuck Noll came in and said, The reason you're losing is that you're not any good, and I'm going to have to get rid of most of you. And to get rid of most of the roster is exactly what Noll did. Chuck Noll, in his first season, carried over 28 players from the 1968 roster. In 1970, Noll cut that number down even further by only having 15 players remain from the 1968 roster. By 1971, Chuck Noll had trimmed the carryover from the 1968 roster to just 8 players, and by 1972, only 5 players from the 1968 Steelers were still on the team. So the year that I think is most notable is 1971 because it took Noll 3 years roughly to get all of the trash off the team. Chuck Noll didn't post a winning season until 1972, but there is no denying that he got rid of a lot of players in just 3 seasons. If we go over to our beloved Detroit Lions, Jim Schwartz and Martin Mayhew in one season turned over more than half the roster. By 2010, only 13 players from the 0-16 roster remained, and by 2011, only 10 players remained. So we see a similar pattern. It took both regimes roughly 1 year to turn over half the roster, and by year 3, pretty much all of the trash was cleaned out. Now, when we go to the 2017 Browns, they didn't waste any time at all cleaning up the mess. Only 21 players from the 2017 Browns were still on the roster by 2018. By 2019, there were only 8 players from the 2017 roster. The Browns wasted very little time cleaning up the mess. The year is now 2020, and the Browns only have 7 players remaining from the 0-16 team, and they're not looking too shabby right now. These teams were basically the worst of the worst. Chuck Noll inherited a gutter trash franchise. Yes, I know the Steelers are not gutter trash now, but at the time that Noll inherited the Steelers, they were really bad. And it took Noll 3 years to cut the remaining players down to single digits. The Lions, in their 3rd year removed from being 0-16, got it down to 10 players. They didn't get it quite down to single-digit players remaining, but you can see that it took roughly 3 years to have the necessary turnover. It only took the Browns 2 years to get the remaining players down to single digits. Like I said, these examples are probably the worst of the worst in terms of having to make something out of nothing. Would you say that the current state of the Lions is worse than the state of these 3 teams I referenced? I don't think it is. I think the next regime could clean this up in 2 years if Matt Patricia and Bob Quinn don't work out. If it took 3 years to clean up the worst of the worst, why would it take 3 years to clean up just a standard mess? And the 0-16 Lions weren't taken over by some great head coach or some great general manager. Jim Schwartz and Martin Mayhew have yet to get a head coaching job or a general manager job. If those two were able to turn over the roster as fast as they did, then I don't think it would really take that long for the next regime to turn over this roster. It could take longer than 3 years, but this is roughly the timeline of what you would be looking at if you're a Lions fan, if we were to go ahead and give Bob Quinn and Matt Patricia one more season. So now we're going to try to answer the $1 million question. Are the Detroit Lions a head coach away? I think we are a head coach away from being a playoff team. I don't know if I can confidently say that we are a head coach away from winning a Super Bowl. And as I mentioned earlier in the video, the Lions being just a consistent playoff team will only give us temporary gratification. As of me recording this, the Lions have 7 games left to improve their deficiencies. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that you should be getting wasted on Kool-Aid believing that it's going to happen. But drastic mid-season or late-season improvements have been done before. So what if the Lions are a head coach away from making it to the playoffs or winning a Super Bowl? Well, like I said earlier in the video, if we are indeed a head coach away and the right guy is out there, then let's go ahead and make the move. But do you, the viewer, feel that way? I personally don't know how I feel. While Matt Patricia, for me personally, gets the most blame as to why the season has gone the way it has, I don't think the players are that far behind. Stafford hasn't had his best season up to this point. Of the 9 fumbles the Lions have forced, only 3 of them were recovered. The Lions also drop a lot of passes. What I'm getting at is that yes, while Patricia does need to perform better, the players need to perform better as well. In all honesty, this whole question can basically sum up this video in a nutshell. We haven't been a head coach away since Buddy Parker came in 1951. Do you, the viewer, think the players we have right now are as good as the players we had in 1951? When Buddy Parker took over the Lions, He inherited 3 players that would go on to make it into Canton in Bobby Lane, Doak Walker, and Lou Creekmer. And he even had a very Hall of Fame worthy player that hasn't gotten in Don Dahl. Do you, the viewer, see 4 Hall of Fame caliber players on this team right now being wasted away? I can see one whose only shot at getting in is to win a Super Bowl. And based on what I've seen from him this season, I don't know if I can say that he can still carry a team the way he could 3 or 4 years ago. There's still 7 games for him to change my perception, but as of right now, I have not seen it. Like I said, if we are a head coach away and the right guy is out there, then this whole video is completely irrelevant. But I don't think we are, and that is why I think we should give Matt Patricia and Bob Quinn one more chance to get this right. If we move on from this regime after this season, do you think we're going to make the playoffs? If we keep this regime after this season, do you think we're going to make the playoffs? The answer to both of those questions for the majority of you is probably no. Don't get me wrong, I'm with the majority in that I don't believe that Quinn and Patricia are the long-term answer. However, if we break down the best case and worst case scenario with keeping these two, the best case scenario is that they prove us wrong, and the worst case scenario is that they prove us right. So what difference does it make if we give these two one last chance? It will make very little difference. It'll take around 2 or 3 years to get all these players out of here, at least based on the examples I showed. And we've been waiting how long to get a championship? I think those couple years will make very little difference, honestly. So let me know what you guys think. I don't expect any of you to agree with me, but hopefully I was able to give a slightly different perspective on this whole topic. If you ever need consistent Lions talk, the DSA hosts a show called The Roundtable on Tuesdays and Thursdays, starting at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you need consistent Pistons talk, we have a show called Above the Rim, and it starts between 7 and 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And if you need consistent Red Wings talk, we have the Offside Show, and I am the current host of that show, starting at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. All the people who host the show are listed on this slide. We don't generally know who's hosting the show until the day of, so keep an eye out for all that, and make sure to check out the people I have down in the description, and you'll know who is hosting the show when the show is being hosted. But thank you for watching. Let me know what you guys think. I hope I was able to give a little bit of a different perspective on this topic.